Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another Orion Tech Tips video. In today's video, we are doing part 2 of my $3,500 workstation slash gaming PC. Now, if you missed part 1, I will have a playlist in the description linked down below of all the videos I have done so far. So part 1 that I already filmed and posted about 2 weeks ago, that was the parts overview. This video is part 2, which is the why. I will be going over each part and explaining why I chose it for myself, as well as what is above it and below it, as well as other alternatives you can choose from, and why or why you wouldn't want to choose that component. Now, as I said in last video, the theme of this computer is longevity and upgradability. So someone might say, well, I can get the same FPS for a cheaper price with those same core components. And that's true, but you sacrifice a lot of things to get there, as I will be explaining later on in this video. So we are going to do this tech deals format. Part 1 is the video I already published. That is the parts overview. Part 2, which is the video I'm filming right now, that is going to be the why video, explaining the parts in detail, and part 3 is going to be the gaming benchmark video. Now, I know my mother asked if I would be doing a build video itself, or actually build this computer, and I told her no. Now, I already built the computer. I will be talking about my building experience in this video and maybe even in part 3. But no, I did not want to do a video because people who do computer building tutorials are a lot better than me at building computers and can do so without making as many mistakes, with less trial and error, if any at all. And they also have professional videographers and really expensive cameras all around them, including above, which I don't have. I am just filming with my phone, so it didn't really make sense for me to do so. If you don't know how to build a computer, plenty of very knowledgeable YouTubers have given you tutorials. So it would only be a disservice to you if I did one myself. Now, expect this video to be roughly an hour long. I know someone commented in my last video saying that they couldn't hear me. I will be editing this video on my computer, not my phone, using this computer that I built. I will be raising the audio, but I must say, I watched the video on my phone speaker, my computer soundbar, my headphones, my AirPods, the TV speaker, and it sounded completely fine. I'm curious, can you guys, do you have trouble hearing me? Because I'd be curious to get some other opinions on that front. But as I mentioned in part 1, that was the parts overview video. This is a custom-built computer. I don't expect anyone to build this exact same computer with all of the same exact parts that I built myself and changed nothing. This is a custom-built computer. I customized this computer for my needs. I'm expecting you guys to do the same thing, so maybe you'll draw some inspiration and choose a few of the same parts that I chose, but you probably will also choose some different parts that I did not choose, and that's absolutely fine. That is the point of a custom-built computer. Also, one last question before I start talking about the parts. I'm doing this tech deals format. I already mentioned I've been talking about for years how much I like tech deals. I've been watching him since pretty much the beginning of his channel. He had less than 10K subscribers. What happened to him? He hasn't posted in over a year. I don't know. He privated his Twitter page. His wife posted something a couple months after they stopped posting on YouTube, something about her leveling up on World of Warships. But nothing. People are asking her where they went. A bunch of people in the comments are asking. I know a year ago he started posting member exclusive videos for everyone to see. I asked him when are you doing like original content? When are you making like new content? He liked my comments, but he didn't respond to me. He liked a lot of others, but didn't actually answer their questions. And then randomly, he took those videos down along with around 1,000 other videos, as well as all of his playlists and all of the live streams he has done with his wife. What the heck happened to my favorite YouTuber, who I wrote a paper about how much I liked him in 7th grade or 8th grade? Many years ago, and in 6th grade, I believe, I made a video about how much I liked him. Tech Deals, where are you? I want you back. Anyway, let's try to continue his legacy and start off with the CPU. Kicking things off for the CPU. As I mentioned, part 1, I went with the Ryzen 7 9800X 3D. If you are looking to build a high-end gaming computer, this should be your only option. This is your only choice. Buy this CPU. You are getting the best gaming performance in the world without having to pay the most money, which I think is incredible. I mean, AMD, I think, priced this very reasonably at $480. When this came out, sold out everywhere. People were reselling it for 2, 3 plus X the price. Very expensive. It has finally gone down to MSRP. You can buy this for even cheaper than $480. Last time I checked, it was $475. I do applaud AMD for not charging an absolute fortune for the best gaming CPU. Now, this is 8 cores, 16 threads on one CCD, all of which have 3D V-cache. Now, that term gets thrown around a lot, but a lot of people don't actually take the time to explain what that means. So AMD figured out that if you add a lot of L3 cache, the CPU will perform significantly better under like under intense CPU utilization use cases when your CPU is the bottleneck, such as low resolution, high FPS gaming, by adding a bunch of L3 cache. So they basically stacked it on top of each other, hence the 3D V-cache. So this one, you can buy this one, and the upside with this versus last generation's 7800X 3D is the 3D V-cache is under the CCD, meaning it's less temperature sensitive, so you can overclock it, get higher clock speeds, versus the 7800X 3D. The 3D V-cache was above the CCD, making it more heat sensitive, so you could not get as high clock speeds out of it, making it worse for productivity. So if you want the other one, if you want last generation CPU and it's say $100+ off, and you just game, yeah, okay, that would be enticing. That's definitely something to consider. But if you do content creation and you do want those higher clock speeds, then definitely get this. But I know Optimum Tech and probably other people have done content creation on the 7800X3, so it's probably not the end of the world. Now, you might be wondering, okay, there's certain CPUs above this. There's the Ryzen 9 9950X3. Now, keep in mind, there's no script around me. I'm just going off the top of my head, so if I do get, like, a number wrong, I apologize. Sorry. But I will try not to. So, the 9950X 3D, essentially, that came out. I actually bought this back in January with a 3-year warranty. I'll talk more about that. So that came out. It's technically a 16-core chip, but not really. It's basically two 8-core chips. It's basically this and a 9700X glued on. So the gaming performance is not, it's going to be at best the same. I would not recommend that if you're just doing gaming, because the CCD switching would cause lag in your game. Granted, you can go into the BIOS and disable that second CCD, but then why are you on that chip? If you need 16 cores for your productivity use case, then certainly that one is a enticing option. There is a downside of that. See, a few downsides. I will get back to that. And then if you just do productivity, then actually the Core Ultra 9 by Intel might actually be the best option for you. Someone might mention, now that's 24 cores without hyperthreading. Why, Intel, would you do that on your most high-end chips? Especially when the term hyperthreading comes from you, and all of your other previous high-end chips had hyperthreading. I don't know. But anyway, if you just care about product, this is obviously on the mainstream computing market. I'm not, if you're watching this video, you're probably not in the market to spend $5,000+ on a CPU such as a Ryzen Threadripper or an Intel Xenon. You're probably not interested in that, so I'm not going to talk about that in this video. We're just talking about the mainstream consumer market for now. So go with that. If you do, yes, productivity, Intel Core Ultra 9, and then if you might ask, okay, what about the i9 13900K or the i9 14900K or KS? I personally would just stay away from those CPUs. They used to be good. I mean, I had a laptop, the G16, with a 13900HX, which was like 90% of the 13900K. Same core count, slightly less clock speeds just because of the thermal limitations on the laptop. Beast of a CPU, especially for high core count productivity workloads. Amazing. However, the thermal issues at this point are just insane. That's why I would stay away from it. If you want one of those high-end CPUs, you are probably going to want to pair it with a high-end motherboard, such as a Z890, which would allow it to utilize its full potential, pulling a bunch of watts. I've seen them pull 500+ watts. Of course, Intel, with their new BIOS updates, or new, I guess it's over a year old now, they are like frying themselves. So I know Intel faced a lot of backlash. So those CPUs I would stay away from, but if you're just interested in productivity, then their Core Ultra lineup, specifically the 9, if you want that, just go high-end, go with the Core Ultra 9. That is, if you're doing gaming, though, that definitely isn't the best option. Though I did mention I would get back to the Ryzen 9 9950X 3D. I was originally going to sell this CPU and buy that one. The reason why I didn't is I chatted back and forth with a few people that were interested in buying this. Ultimately, I would take too much of a loss, and I wasn't willing to do that, so I'm just going to use this one. And the reason why I'm like, okay, maybe I'll just take the loss and just buy the 9950X 3D right now. The reason why I wouldn't do that is because it's not going to retain very much value at all. The last chip on a platform, Tech Deals talks a lot about this, the last chip on a platform always maintains its best value. That's true for, I mean, all the way back. You can go to like the 9900K, that one maintained like most of its value. Same thing with the Ryzen 9 on AM4, the 5950X, and the Ryzen 7 5800X 3D. Those were the ones that maintained their value. It's always the last chip, so I'm thinking I'm going to ride this out for a couple more years, and then when the highest end 16-core plus 3D Vcache CPU comes out, I'm going to throw that in and then continue to ride that out for a few more years. So that is my plan. And if you're wondering, yes, this actually is good for productivity and maybe even better. I think it was Tech Yes City that said that he tried both the 9800X 3D and the 9950X 3D. And he actually preferred this one because of its single CCD, because his video editing workloads didn't require more than 8 cores. So he just went with this, and he didn't have to suffer with any lag with the CCD switching. So, I mean, that is definitely an enticing argument for this. If your workloads don't use more than 8 cores, well then you should probably stick with this. Now, there's of course the 9900X and the 3D 9900X 3D, which is basically a 6-core, I believe 3D Vcache, 6 cores, not 3D Vcached, 2 CCDs again. So you're only getting 6 cores when you're gaming, so maybe that's an issue for you, maybe it's not. And then, of course, there's the 9950X non-3D, which is basically 2 9700X non-3D. Well, I mean, there's not a 3D variant of that yet, at least, glued together with an Infinity Fabric. So there's a lot of CPUs to talk about. I know inevitably someone is going to say, well, why didn't you talk about that? Why didn't you talk about that? I don't have unlimited time. I also don't have unlimited knowledge. I can't possibly talk about everything without this video being many, many, many hours long. And I don't know of all the CPUs, quite frankly. Or, I mean, I know of all the mainstream CPUs, but maybe someone will say, why didn't you talk about this 10-year-old niche CPU that not a lot of people have heard of? But yeah, anyway, also, I am not Tech Deals. I don't have, like, the boxes everywhere, so I'm just going off my head. So, yeah. One more thing I do want to mention with the CPU is if you're gaming, 8 cores is fine. Someone might mention, well, I need more for productivity. That might be true. However, for video editing specifically, you really don't, even for high-end video editing. Now, historically speaking, it's true that it usually did target more of the CPU. However, now that's not the use case. Now it's mostly GPU and memory utilization that really matters. So have a powerful GPU with a lot of VRAM, which I do in this build. I'll talk about it actually right after the CPU, and a lot of RAM, which I also include in this build. So 8 cores might be fine for you, even for high-end video editing, though only you can know that, because I don't know your exact use case. Only you know your exact use case. Or at least 8 cores is fine for now, until, I guess, AMD releases their next lineup of CPUs in a year or two. Then maybe you might want to switch to something more than 8 cores. But again, personal preference, only you can know your use case and what hardware is required. For the GPU, and this category is more simple in my opinion, I went with the RX 7900 XTX. I also bought this back in January, shortly before the GPU shortage, which is getting a lot better now. So, I know some people might have some questions. Why didn't I buy the 9070 XT, which is AMD's new quote-unquote card that's worse in some ways than this? In my opinion, the important ways. Well, first of all, that wasn't out, and I also knew the rumors were it wasn't going to be that impressive, which, sure enough, it was correct. Now, the 9070 XT standalone is an excellent card. I have no issue with it at all. However, compared to this, I mean, this specific one is only like a year old. It came out last year, but the actual card, the XTX itself, is a couple years old at this point. However, GPU technology, with the exception of the 5090, which even that isn't great, but the 4090 was so impressive. It was 80% better than the 3090, but the 5090 is only 30% better than the 4090. And no, I don't count the frame gen and the fake frames and all of the shenanigans that NVIDIA uses. I don't count that. And also, that's coming to the 4090 if it didn't come already. So, even with that, the 5090 still isn't that much more impressive because both of them have the same DLSS technology. So, if you're trying to decide between this and a 9070 XT, personally, I would just buy whichever is cheaper. I mean, it's 2 steps forwards and 2 steps back. So, it's really just a side grade. Certainly don't upgrade to that upgrade, quote unquote, from this to that, but you are getting 24 gigabytes of GDDR6 with this and better rasterization performance. With the 9070 XT, you are getting better frame generation, better upscaling, better like AI technology, and better ray tracing. Now, I don't care about ray tracing. Yes, I've used it even in like fancier NVIDIA cards like the 4070. I was actually playing some Jedi Survivor, and I was playing at 1600p maximum detail without ray tracing, getting 70 FPS, perfectly playable, loving the experience, beautiful game. And then I'm like curious, what happens if I turn on ray tracing? So I turned on ray tracing. I went from 70 FPS to 35, and that's with an NVIDIA card that are supposedly good at ray tracing. Yeah, that's not impressive. I mean, the puddle reflections, they look better, but most people, that was a single-player title. So most people won't notice that, but the vast majority of people in a multiplayer title, when like you're focusing on enemies and you're like running on walls, like a very fast-paced Twitch shooter, you're certainly not going to notice puddle reflections or the reflection in the car window. So yeah, I'm not a fan of ray tracing. However, this thing actually surprised me. I was playing Cyberpunk 2077 maximum detail with, yes, even ray tracing maxed out. And this thing at 1440p was still able to deliver 85 FPS average. That's not bad. That, like, shocked me. I also tried Fortnite, maxed it out at 1440p, even maxed out the ray tracings and maxed out the shadows, which I usually leave those completely off. 120 FPS is what I was averaging with this. I thought this couldn't do ray tracing at all. I thought it was garbage at ray tracing. It actually surprised me. Now, I'm still not planning to do ray tracing. I know what it was. I know what it looks like. I didn't want it. That's why I bought this and not a 4080 Super, which isn't that much different than a 5080. So you might be wondering, okay, what about the NVIDIA side? So in this price range, we have the 5090, which is the best of the best. But that's MSRP is $2,000. You're never going to get it at that. You're probably going to pay at least $2,500. And I've even seen them going for $6,000 plus if you want like a fancy one. Obviously, there's shortage, though it is certainly getting better now. But yeah, that's kind of in like the price tier of its own, the best of the best. If you have unlimited money, go with that. Though I must say, it is, for gaming, it's overkill. I mean, maybe if you want to keep it for over 5 years, okay, fine. But for gaming, it's overkill. And maybe you'll say, well, actually, no. I need that power because I'm a professional content creator. I make money with my computer. The faster my computer is, the more money I make. Well, okay, if that's the case, the 5090, and Jay's 2 cents made this point, isn't powerful enough for you. You need to be on an NVIDIA Quadro workstation card. I mean, I'm more into I more keep up with the consumer grade hardware, but I know the NVIDIA Quadros, even in 2013, had 64 gigabytes of VRAM, which I think was insane. My high school electronics teacher told me about that. He was working in South Korea at the time, at LG, I believe, and like he was using those high-end GPUs, which I think is just incredible. But yeah, if that's your use case, well, then you should be on a professional workstation enthusiast GPU, and probably a CPU too, but that's out of the scope of this video. Step down would be the 5080, which I don't find that in some games, this beats the 5080, and that's like a MSRP is 1,000, though typically you can't find it for that. It's closer to 1,500. I know Jackson from the Toaster Bros bought that for $1,500, and it was like some base, like the Zotac one, which I think is the cheapest one. Super excited. Brought it home. He had like a high-end desktop with the same 9800X 3D. Swapped out his old 4070 Ti, threw in the 5080, and he said without running a benchmark or without a frame rate counter, he could not tell the difference, and he felt like he just wasted $1,500. Ouch. And then, of course, there's also the 4070 Ti and, sorry, the 5070 Ti and the 5070 and the 5060, which you probably can't tell the difference between those and the 40 series cards. So NVIDIA this generation has just been lacking, but that's probably because they make the vast majority of their money on AI now, so they're not really caring about the gamers too much, which I believe is unfortunate. I go with AMD because they offer better price to performance. However, I want NVIDIA to keep making GPUs, and I want AMD to keep making GPUs, because competition is always good for the consumer. If NVIDIA stops making mainstream GPUs for consumers, and AMD is the only one, well, then AMD will become the new NVIDIA, and then charge you a fortune for not that much improvement. So we need them both. Now, there's also there's a lot of GPUs. There's the 9070 non-XT. I would not recommend that, because for $50 more, you can buy the XT variant, which is noticeably faster. And then, of course, you can go lower end, like the 9060 XT, which, I mean, for 1080p and maybe even some casual 1440p, is a good card, especially if you want to use it as a placeholder. But yeah, there's a lot we can talk about. I do want to shift the conversation into AMD versus NVIDIA. Most people, myself included, which is why I bought an AMD card, should be on an AMD card because they just offer the better price to performance. Way too many people think that they need an NVIDIA card when they actually don't. I edit videos, I do coding, virtual machines, live streaming, pretty much all of the creative applications. I've never once struggled with an AMD GPU. There's never been a wall that I've hit that I could have jumped over with an NVIDIA GPU. Way too many people say, well, no, I need an NVIDIA GPU because I want ray tracing. They then spend more money to get worse performance and less VRAM, which you need a lot of VRAM for ray tracing, keep that in mind. And then they try ray tracing. Looks slightly better. I don't like performance, they turn it off and then they regret not buying an AMD card. Even people who do content creation for a living, recording and editing videos, like Vex, I know, said that he regretted spending more money for a 3080 when he could have bought a 6800 XT with more VRAM, more performance for cheaper, just because he thought he needed the NVIDIA features, which he didn't. Now, I know NVIDIA, yes, they have their CUDA technology, and yes, they have their eMMC encoder. Do you need those? Because I've done live streaming, video editing, and I've never ran into those issues. Now, someone might mention, well, I use Adobe Premiere Pro. That is true. That greatly favors Intel and NVIDIA for quick sync and CUDA acceleration. It certainly can take advantage, though I must say Premiere Pro as of recent years, is not the best video editing software. That spot would be taken by DaVinci Resolve. Premiere Pro and all of the Adobe Suite softwares are expensive as heck. You can no longer buy them outright. You have to pay a hefty monthly subscription. You can buy DaVinci Resolve outright, and it performs the same if you're using a NVIDIA or an AMD GPU or an Intel or an AMD CPU. So a lot of people are switching to DaVinci Resolve for that reason. It's not only a better editing software, it's cheaper, at least over the long term it will be, and it performs just as well on an AMD card. Now, even if you are exclusively doing content creation, you might still want to buy an AMD card because they usually have more VRAM. Now, even if you compare this to, say, a 5080, well, that only has 16. This has 24. And I know certainly the more VRAM that you have, the better content creation, specifically video editing, is. Now, there's a lot that we can talk about. Does any games use 24 gigabytes of VRAM? No, not that I have found, at least not at 1440p. At 4K, maybe the story is different. I did see Call of Duty use 20 gigabytes of VRAM. So, I know in my laptop video, I did say VRAM is not as important as people make it seem, which is true for laptops because those GPUs are not nearly as powerful as desktop GPUs. The 4070 laptop GPU is approximately 55% slower than the desktop 4070, and the 4090, which isn't that much different than the 5090, is a whopping 80% slower, and both of them you are taking a VRAM cut as well. So laptop and desktop GPUs, a lot of people don't know this, a lot of people have asked me about this. No, they're not the same. I try to address as many of those questions and concerns in the comment section in my laptop videos that I have made. Anyway, yes, so to summarize, even today in late 2025, this is still one of the best GPUs. If you can't buy this, if you don't need 24 gigabytes of VRAM, no worries. Just go with the 9070 XT. It's weird to say NVIDIA switch the numbers around. And you're basically getting the same thing, just with less VRAM. And you can enjoy better upscaling and ray tracing if you're into those type of things, especially if you play a lot of single player titles. One more thing I do want to mention about this GPU is the specific variant I went with the Mercury Magnetic Air. It is a massive 4-slot GPU with magnetic fans, meaning you can remove them, you can swap them out. If a fan fails, you don't have to replace the entire GPU, or at least solder off the entire front plate. You can just pull out the magnetic fan and throw in a new one. Now, I love that feature. However, that's not the reason I bought this. I bought this for the incredible cooling. Now, I think I mentioned this in the first video. I'm not sure if I edited out just to make time, but I will tell you the reason why XFX, if I can get my letters correct, made this card is because they heard rumors that AMD would be releasing a super powerful 7950 XTX. And they're like, okay, I want to get ahead of the game. Let's build this super beefy, powerful card to be able to cool that behemoth. And turns out AMD never released it. So they're like, okay, fine. We'll just put this crazy cooler and these magnetic fans on the current 7900 XTX. And it will just be an incredible, thermally efficient, nearly silent card, and I can confirm that is the case. The temperatures are very nice on this card. I will certainly be talking more about that in the gameplay videos. Getting like 60 degrees, certainly no more than 70 degrees Celsius. Though I'll be talking more about temperatures in part 3, the gaming benchmarks video. And I have maxed this thing out, pulling close to 400 watts with my ear to the case, and I could hardly hear a thing. That is how silent this GPU is. It is incredible. Now, I've previously said my use case is different than yours, which obviously still is the case, where we should probably go with different things. Some people should buy this, some people should buy that. Use cases are different. There's certainly, we should go with different parts. These people go with this part, these people go with that part. That's the same for most components like RAM, storage, sometimes even the GPU and the CPU. However, that's probably not the case, or certainly less so the case with the motherboard. Now, why I talked about this in the first video, I love this thing. This is the ASRock X870E Nova Wi-Fi Phantom Gaming motherboard. $350 MSRP. You can often find it for closer to $300. What do you get for that price? Basically everything. I mean, you get 5 M.2 slots. Now, keep in mind, this is not an eATX board. This is a standard ATX board. You do not need a full tower case. You can put this inside of a mid-tower case, which was a big factor for this. 23-phase power, 4 SATA ports. You get Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 5.2. You get a plethora of USB-A ports, 2 USB 4 ports, even the USB-As, some of them, 4 of them, I believe, are USB 3.2 Gen 2, the fastest type A's you can get. HDMI for troubleshooting. Of course, you shouldn't be using that if you have a graphics card. ALC 4082 audio codec. You get a back plate on a $300 motherboard. You get, HDMI, USB Type-C. You get, so the first slot, first M.2 slot is Gen 5, so you can go with that. I didn't, because I'm not interested in Gen 5 SSDs. Then I guess 3 are Gen 4, and the last one is Gen 3. Even if you occupy all of them, your graphics card will still run at 16x. Now, the first one is Gen 5 16x, the second one is Gen 3 16x, and then the last one is Gen 3 1x. So that would be for like your audio cards, or maybe you want like some more hot swappable SSDs. You can certainly go with that, or some capture cards as well. You basically get easy release, which is not included on the far more expensive ASRock X870E Taichi Lite, which is an eATX motherboard. There's no quick release, which, I mean, I've actually pulled out the GPU and put it back in several times. The quick release is very nice, I must say. I've built so many computers without it, and I'm not going to say, like, it's not the end of the world if you don't have it, of course, but it makes it so much nicer. It's really, like, nice to have. Also, toolless SSD. Installation is another amazing feature. Every SSD, all 5 of them have heat sinks, 5 gigabit network RJ45. You can see here, yeah, BIOS flashback, clear CMOS. I mean, there's so many features on this motherboard. I can't possibly talk about them all. Like, there's that many. Basically, to summarize, everything that you would want on a motherboard, even the high-end premium features, this has like 99% of them. Alright, so I mean, I know the Tai Chi, which is ASRock's high-end board, I know that has 26 phase power instead of 23. It has 6 SATA ports instead of 4, but I mean, other than that, you're pretty much getting you're pretty much getting the same board. You even get RGB lighting if you're into that. Of course, if you're not, you can just turn it off. Personally, I don't care because my computer just goes under my desk. I don't even look at it. But I do like the subtle glow. It's very minimal, and especially with my other components that don't have RGB, this thing, it's certainly, it's not like in your face overwhelming, but like it's a nice premium touch to like add to the ambiance, I would say. Now, as I mentioned last video, I was actually going to go with a far more expensive motherboard that was costed, I think at the time, $290 more, and that was the Asus ProArt X870E. Originally, I was going to buy that, but then I found this, and I'm like looking at the spec sheet back to back. I'm like, what? Am I delusional? I get more premium features with the cheaper motherboard, and I'll save a couple $100. That's crazy. So, with that, you are only getting 4 M.2 slots. With, by the way, this, you can actually run 2 4090s at max speed, even like 5090s possibly. Because yes, a 4090 can run at max speed even with a Gen 3 PCIe. I know that. I wouldn't really recommend that. Quite frankly, for gaming, it would make 0 difference. For content creation, it would, but most people can get away with 1 GPU, but that is still a very cool feature about this. But yes, okay, the Asus ProArt does not have a postcode. Of course, this does. It's not that hard to find a motherboard with a postcode. Even like cheaper motherboards have postcodes. They are very useful, I must say. I will talk more about that later on in a different segment of this video. Love postcodes. Every motherboard should have them. It does not have that. Now, I've done some research. Asus's defense seems to be, this is a creator board. Creators are not tech enthusiasts. They don't know how to use a postcode. I don't exactly buy into that premise, but even if I were to buy into that premise, first of all, creators, if you're building your computer, if you're creating content, you probably know a lot about computers, but okay, take that to the side. For the sake of argument, let's believe Asus. Creators are bumbling idiots that have no clue how to use a postcode. Why are you charging so much for it, is my question. So 4 M.2 slots. Oh, and by the way, if I occupy all 4 of them, my GPU cuts in half. It goes from 16x to 8x. Not the case with this, and you get an extra M.2 SSD slots. So, yeah, I mean, that was, you're paying more for less features. Also, there's no RGB. You might care, you might not, but it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. Certainly, if it's cheaper and it comes with it, I'll take that any day. The one thing that you do get with the Asus is a 10 gigabit RJ45 LAN port, as well as a 2.5, meaning if you have a NAS, yeah, okay, you might want to go with the ProArt. However, you can buy 26 terabyte hard drives. can buy multiple. Put them in a RAID array. Solves your issue right there. So, I mean, I don't know anyone that uses a NAS. They're also incredibly loud, so you probably wouldn't want to, like, buy your computer where you're working. But yeah, I mean, that's the one thing. Also, my Wi-Fi, most, like 99% of your Wi-Fi isn't fast enough to fully saturate a 10 gigabit Ethernet port. 5 gigabits is more than enough. That's coming from me, someone that has a Wi-Fi 6E router. Not Wi-Fi 7, but the second fastest. I mean, ultimately, it was also just a pleasure. Super easy to build in this motherboard. There's really, like, nothing more to talk about. So you can buy, certainly, I mean, the ROG Asus Hero X870E, you can buy that. That is a more expensive board, several $100 more. You're not really getting additional features. I personally am not a fan of ROG, not because they make bad products. They really don't, especially at the high end, that is. They just charge way more than they're worth, in my opinion. If you are spending $5,000 plus super duper premium, then okay, yeah, sure, you can buy ROG components for that. That's absolutely fine. But if budget is at all in your vocabulary, then you should probably stay clear of ROG. MSI also has their godlike motherboard that's like $1,300. And I even asked someone at the computer store, does anyone actually buy this? In what use case would I possibly want this or need this motherboard? And he said the only people that really buy this motherboard are the people that want to set world record overclocking records with liquid nitrogen because of like the really like heat, the beefy like VRM heatsink. But other than that, I mean, it comes with like nice things, stickers, a hot swappable SSD slot, which I mean you can just buy for not that much. But yeah, I certainly would not recommend you spend $1,300 on a consumer grade motherboard. If you want to do that, okay, you're probably in like the workstation, Threadripper, or Xenon territory. But yeah, this can also support 256 gigabytes of high-speed DDR5 RAM. Is it up to like something insane like 8400 megahertz? Way more than you would actually need. But yeah, here's the back, if anyone's curious. I also love how it puts like a warning. This comes with a button battery, meaning the CMOS battery. Don't eat the CMOS battery. Okay, thank you, Ezrock. I was not planning on it, but thank you for the warning. In short, this thing is simply incredible. I was going to spend more, but I didn't need to. This thing's a beast. Moving on to the system memory. Now, this is empty because I already installed it to my build. Running great. I love it. But this is Kingston Fury 128 gigabytes of DDR5 5600 megahertz CL36 cost latency. 5600, you could go up to 6000. I would not recommend going above 6000 because it would mess with the memory controller and it wouldn't give you a 1-to-1 ratio. There's ways to get past it. However, even if you do, the performance difference is negligible. I know that even companies are making 10,000, probably even more, not megahertz, but mega transfers. I apologize if I get my language confused. I might swap the two, but yeah, with a speed of 5600 mega transfers per second. Okay, anyway, as TechDeal said, if you're building a gaming PC, or I guess not just a gaming PC, but a PC, you should either go with 32 gigabytes. That is, if you are just using one monitor and you are just gaming and you have nothing else running in the background, go with 32. If you are gaming and multitasking, maybe you have two monitors, gaming, YouTube video stuff in your task tray, go with 64 gigabytes. If you are doing a bunch of creative applications and you need it for productivity, well, then go with 128 gigabytes. You can also go with 256. The motherboard I chose in a lot of high-end boards, even mid-range boards, do support up to 256. And that actually makes sense if you want to do like really high-end virtualization use, or if you are doing high-end video editing and you want to load everything into your memory for the smoothest playback. Though you sacrifice a lot, not just financially. To get there, I will talk more about that in a second. But yeah, this RAM runs at 5600 megahertz, mega transfer per second. Easily. This does have an Expo profile and an Intel XMP profile as well, so meaning that it is guaranteed to run at that speed, stable, no matter if you're using an AMD CPU, hence Expo, or an Intel CPU, hence XMP. I remember like RAM used to only have one or the other, and it was pretty rare that RAM actually had both. I know the Patriot Viper, actually, I think that was like one of the only ones to actually include both, but I love that this includes both. So if I do ever use like an Intel machine, or if I have one in the future, actually I do, but I have a i7 3770 machine that I built like right there, and I also have my Ryzen 7 1700X build right there. But yeah, anyway, I love this RAM, and I know one of the questions I think multiple people have asked. The confusion has primarily been, or I guess the question has primarily been with my RAM choice and my storage choice. We'll talk more about my storage choice next. But people are wondering, why in the world do I need 128 gigabytes? And the answer is, for now, at least, I don't. Now, I was actually originally going to go with 64. That's what I had in my PC part picker list. But then the more I thought about it, the less sense that it made. I was already hitting a wall with 64. I was maxing out 64 just with virtualization. So if I wanted to do more things on top of that, well, then I needed more system memory. So, and not to mention that I guess, longer that we move on, the more software advances requiring more hardware, which would include system memory. So I'm like, 64 isn't going to last very long. I'll go with 92. So, boom, I added 92 into the PC part picker list. But then I noticed that 128 gigabytes isn't that much more. So that's what I went with. Now, my goal with this, and I'm sure it is I want to throw this into my system and be done with it. I don't want to touch it. Now, someone might ask, well, okay, why didn't you go with 64 or 92, and then as soon as you needed more system memory, why not just throw in an identical kit and then you would double it? And the answer is, maybe I could, but it's also not that simple, and I could also run into a lot of issues doing that. Now, first of all, the memory controller really can only ideally handle 2. Yes, I know there's 4 RAM slots. Yes, technically it can handle 4, but you're going to get a lot of slowdowns. Typically, your RAM is only going to run at 3600 megahertz, mega transfers per second. So it's going to slow down. The memory controller certainly will not enjoy having 4 sticks. But also, if you are buying 2 64s or 2 92s, 220, or two separate kits of anything, even if they are identical, which, first off, there is no guarantee that you will be able to find the identical kit. It is not guaranteed to work together. This is one single 128 gigabyte kit, 2 RAM DIMMs, works perfectly. It is guaranteed to work. It has been tested. 2 separate RAM kits have not been tested. to work together. It is not guaranteed that they will work at all. And even if they do, chances are you will have to slow down the memory clock speed. So what could happen, and what would probably happen, is in 1 to 3 years, 64 would no longer be enough. And then I would open PC Part Picker, open Newegg, open whatever, Micro Center, and then I'd try to find it. Maybe I could, maybe I couldn't. Even if I buy it, I put it in my system. It might not work, or even if it did, it would run slower, noticeably slower. And I might end up just having to, okay, I'm done with this. I spent way too much money. I just have to buy a 128 gigabyte memory kit and then throw that in. If you're cheap, you're gonna pay twice. So buy not only what you need now, but also buy what you need not only today, but also tomorrow. Because overall, you are going to save the most money. Now, with this machine, I had this back in 2017, back when the original Ryzen CPUs came out. Man, that was an exciting time. I went with 32 gigabytes when the standard was only 8 gigabytes, so that's 4 times the amount now, back then. So 4 times that. Same thing now, 32, I went 128, so 4 times. Even back in 2017, everyone's saying, oh, what the... 32 gigabytes, are you out of your mind? Nobody needs 32 gigabytes. You should go with 8 or 16 at the max. This machine has lasted, what, 7, 8 years? And I didn't have to touch the RAM. Yes, I upgraded the GPU. I probably should have upgraded the CPU too. There's other things that should have been upgraded, but not the RAM. The RAM was perfect. So 7 years from now, 120 gigabytes should be perfectly usable. So anyway, that is why I went with 128 gigabytes. Hopefully that answers your question. But again, just because I need it doesn't mean that you need it. The vast majority of people would be fine with 64. As I mentioned, the second topic where I got a lot of questions on was the storage decision, specifically the storage capacity. Now, I went with 12 terabytes spread across 2 drives. The first one is this WD-SN850X Black. This is the 8 terabytes, and I also had a 4 terabytes in a previous computer. I threw that in as well. This is, of course, my main boot OS drive. Now, I love these drives. That's why I went with another one. And I will tell you right now, a lot of people are questioning, why the heck do you need 4 terabytes? Unlike the RAM, which, yes, 120, it's a lot, certainly, and it is for a fairly niche use case. I'll tell you right now, 12 terabytes of storage is not. It's not a lot of storage. I'm sorry to say. And I'm sure, going to be upgrading my storage more than once, probably. My entire Steam library, probably yours could too, I have a little less than 700 games, could easily max out 12 terabytes. However, I'll be dumping this video, the edited video. I'll be dumping a bunch more stuff onto my drives. Currently, I have about 6 terabytes of storage, and that's just with my key applications installed. A lot of my storage, I have a lot of things stored in the cloud as well as on other drives, both external drives and internal drives on other computers. Now, something I might do once I get like multiple terabytes of video footage is install like a 26 terabyte hard drive. Yes, the slow spinning Rust disk. I'll just dump the footage on there so I won't have to sacrifice SSD space. However, I'll just wait for my SSDs to fill up and then I'll do that. But yeah, 12 terabytes certainly it's going to go by pretty fast, I imagine. I didn't want to like spend a bunch of money on storage off the gate. Now, fun fact, I actually wasn't planning to buy this exact drive originally because it is more high-end than I thought I would need. I originally was going to go with my fast, the 4 terabyte one as my OS boot C drive SSD. And then I was planning to get a slower 8 terabyte, like a mass storage SSD. So key applications on the 4 terabytes, secondary and tertiary applications like my games and the videos on the 8 terabyte mass storage, something like a Samsung 8 terabyte 860 or 870 QVO. I know that Tech Deals has one. I believe he has a what does he have? He has a 980 Pro from Samsung, which is basically the same thing as a 990 Pro. A 4 terabyte SN850X Black, same as me, and then he has the 8 terabyte Samsung 870 QVO for his mass storage. I originally was going to do something similar to that. However, when I checked, this was on sale, and this was actually the cheapest 8 terabyte drive. So I'm like, okay, well, that's a win-win. I want this. And I installed my operating system on this drive. I'm sure, as you know, your C drive, your operating system drive, fills up very fast, even when you're just downloading small applications, your drivers. It fills up fast, even without any games or videos. So that's why I did want like a bigger storage capacity for my drives. Now, in terms of the speed, we're getting about 7,300 megahertz read and 6,900 megahertz write. Very fast. However, you should probably keep about 20% of your drive free. If you like, max it out, it will definitely decrease your speed, specifically your write speed. Now, you might be wondering, okay, there's hard drives, which in 2025 I would not recommend unless you have terabytes of audio and video that you just want to dump on and you don't want to touch it, because as soon as you interact with the footage, you try to like throw it on editing or game on it, it's just miserable. A lot of software doesn't even support hard drives anymore. It will just refuse to download, or even if it does download, once you go to launch it, it says this application does not support hard drives. You have to put this on an SSD. And SSDs have gotten so cheap that it's fine. I mean, I spent right there. I have some El Cheapo basic no-name SATA 60 gigabyte DRAM-less drive that I spent $100 on. That 250 gigabyte Samsung 850 EVO, I also spent over $100 on that. And I think it was like 2016 or 2017. They've gotten so much cheaper. It is incredible. Okay, so SATA SSDs, maybe for mass storage if you just want to dump stuff on. Decent, not great in 2025, but for cheap mass storage, okay, sure, that's fine. There's Gen 3s, which if you're just gaming, that's fine. Maybe you want to do like a Gen 4 for your boot drive and then a bigger Gen 3 for like your games and stuff. Alright, that's fine. Gen 4, I think, is the sweet spot. That's what I went with, 2 Gen 4 drives. And Gen 5, which I would not recommend for most people. That's why I didn't touch it. I would also, on average, a Gen 5 SSD, you're getting about 14, a speed of like 1400, 14,000 megabytes per second. On the read, a little bit slower on the write. 99% of people will not notice a difference, and on average, they're 2 times the price per gigabyte. So I would not recommend them. The only time I would recommend someone buy a Gen 5 drive, the only time you will actually notice the speed difference, no, you will not notice in your everyday task, no, you'll not notice booting up the system, no, you're not going to notice when you're gaming, no, you're not going to notice in the vast majority of things. The only time you will notice is when you're transferring large files. I'm talking multiple terabytes of footage between your drives. Then you will notice. So if you make money with your computer and you need to transfer large files, the faster you transfer the files, the more money you make. Okay, Gen 5 for you makes sense. But for everyone else, myself included, even for the vast majority of tech enthusiasts, I would avoid Gen 5. They're just too expensive. Even if you can afford it, you're not gonna notice the difference. I would stick with Gen 4, personally. For the CPU cooler, there's a lot of options, and I went with the Noctua NHD15G2. Yes, not the LBC. I went with just the standard G2. Because, I mean, that's, it has a flat cold plate. The other ones have a curved cold plate. I am planning on keeping the same CPU cooler throughout the lifespan of this build. Probably going to, I mean, it's rated for like 18 years. There's CPU coolers from Noctua from like 2005 that are 20 years old, still working completely fine. Noctua is an incredible company. I don't think anyone would argue with the fact that this is the best air cooler on the market. And the price reflects it. However, you are paying for the best air cooler. You are paying the most money for the best air cooler. You can also buy liquid coolers at this price, and we'll talk about that more so in a second, as I promised in my first video. But this thing can cool anything, and I do mean any consumer grade CPU, and that includes 13 and 14 gen i9s pulling hundreds of watts. Yes, TechDeals tried it, not just for like bursty benchmarks, but like for sustained workloads for hours on his main editing rig, which I believe was a 13900K that I've seen pull 500 plus watts, which is just crazy. This thing can dissipate it and keep very good temperatures as well. Now, these G2 fans are also silent. I mean, if I put like my ear like really close when it's when my CPU is under full load, which, by the way, should have mentioned this in the CPU segment. The only time I've actually like seen it maxed out was when compiling shaders. No, not even video editing or video rendering. That just maxes out the GPU and not the CPU. So typically it's the GPU is maxed out or the CPU is maxed out. They're usually not both maxed out at the same time. Anyway, but yeah, this thing can dissipate heat. It's incredible. And it's very silent doing so, which I like. The fans also spin at different RPMs, which the Noctua engineers say helps with the noise level. I know the G1 from 10 years ago, or just the Noctua NHD15, was a massive hit when they made the G2, and I do like this a lot. I wish it was in Chromax Black, like the G1 and also the Noctua NHU12A, I believe. That's the 120 millimeter variant. But, you know, again, this thing goes under the desk. Also, the case that I use, the Fractal North, as I mentioned in the last video, it does have a tinted side panel, so you can't really see the beige. But I still like the beige. I still think it looks cool, especially with the wooden aesthetic. Yeah, this does come with thermal paste, so you can choose to apply it however you want. It does not come pre-applied, but I'm guessing most people would rather choose how they apply the thermal paste, how much, where they apply it, and all of that stuff. Keep in mind, it's really only enough for like one, one installation. If you want to like wipe it off, you will have to buy a new tube of thermal paste, unfortunately. That is something I do wish. So this comes with like a screwdriver, not a Phillips head, but just like the specific screwdriver to install the screws. This thing is $180. Noctua. For $180, you can give us a full tube of thermal paste. It's like $20. You can also buy the screwdriver separately for $20, in case you're wondering. But yeah, that if I had to nitpick, that would probably be it. But that's not the problem with the CPU cooler itself. That's just with the accessories that you get. You also do get like a bunch of like washers and mounts with this CPU. It is like incredible. I mean, as you can see in this box. But yeah, okay. Let's talk about other alternatives. So this, in my opinion, is the best. This is my favorite. That's why I went with it. Let's discuss air coolers first, and then we can move on to liquids. Liquid coolers. We probably won't be discussing custom loops because, I mean, if I don't want a custom loop, so many things can go wrong, as you can probably imagine. It also doesn't make that much of a difference in terms of thermals. If any difference at all, it might be worse, in fact. But yeah, if you're Mr. Moneybags, you just care about looks, then okay, go with the custom loop. That's beyond the pale of this video. I'm not interested in the custom loop, and I don't know anyone that is, quite frankly. Okay, so you can get, if you want like but you shouldn't go like super cheap. But I mean, you can get like a Scythe Nugan 5 or a Thermal Rate Peerless Assassin that will cool the 9800X38. A Ryzen 7 processor, but you won't, or at least you shouldn't use it on the high-end Ryzen 9s or i9s or Core Ultra 9s, because it simply will just struggle to dissipate the heat and the temperatures will get too high. So I wouldn't recommend that. However, if you just want to stick with the 9800X3 and you don't want to touch it, then okay, yeah, you can go with one of those. But if you are planning to put it on like a more expensive, I guess like a 16-core X3D CPU, can't do that. I know a lot of people make sacrifices like, oh, I'm just going with these cheap components. I'll go with a El Cheapo case, power supply, motherboard, CPU cooler, and then when they want to upgrade something, well, then the supporting parts aren't there, and it doesn't go well, and then they just have to buy an entirely new computer. If you're cheap, you pay twice. So don't be cheap. Or at least know what your use case and your future use case will be in what direction you want to go with your computer. Okay, so, and then of course if you want to go to those high-end CPUs and stick with air cooling, well then the G2 is excellent for that. I know forgive me, I'm not like some fancy, I'm not a Noctua engineer, obviously. I guess if you thought I was, then thank you. But in terms of like the fans spinning at like different RPMs, I know that's like a new fancy thing that the G2 has. I know quieter, better cooling performance. That's not to say the G1 was a slouch, it's certainly not. But it's 11 years old, because I know that came out in 2014. So it is what it is, but still an excellent CPU cooler, though I would recommend the G2. That's what I would recommend, that's what I went with. Now, you might be asking, what about liquid cooling? It has gotten cheaper, however, especially now in 2025, I don't really see a use case because air coolers have gotten so good. If this breaks, if a fan breaks, all you have to do is replace it. If the pump breaks on an AIO, all-in-one liquid cooler, you have to replace the entire thing. They're also more expensive, and they don't offer much more cooling performance, if any at all. They also don't last as long. They only last 2 to 5 years instead of 18 plus years. Also, there is 0% chance that this thing will break and leak liquid all over your system. There is not a 0% chance that an AIO would do that. And Byte, I'm sure you're familiar with the company, they make the Byte Y70 Touch. A very expensive case that I'm not interested in, and I wouldn't recommend it to most people, if anyone at all. Even Zach Texture, who did buy that, said that he's not a fan of it. But yeah, anyway, super expensive company. I'm sure their liquid coolers are not cheap at all by any means. They have been recalled because they have been leaking all over people's systems. Yeah, not good. Also, they are liquid coolers. I know you can get some on the low end, like the Thermalright liquid coolers, but a lot of them are very expensive. Not because they offer better cooling performance, just because they offer fancy features like RGBs and screens that most people won't even be looking at, because again, the computer sits under my desk. So, I mean, if you do want to do serious overclocking, okay, I guess, yeah, maybe an AIO would make sense, especially if you're going with an i9, a Ryzen 9, or a Core Ultra 9. But if you're building a mid-range to high-end system and you just want excellent noise normalization, excellent thermals, excellent performance, I seriously implore you to buy this. It really is that good. For the power supply, I went with the Asus Strix Republic of Gamers 1200 watt platinum fully modular power supply. Yes, I did say I was not a fan of ROG, and you might be wondering, I watched your first video. Didn't you say you went with the FSP group 1200 watt gold? Yeah, I did. Remember when I said the two most common parts to fail in a computer are the power supply and the motherboard? Well, I was not expecting this thing to fail, but it somehow did. I built this computer, turned on first try, went straight into the BIOS, no issues at all. I then installed Windows on it, and as I was going to download drivers on my USB to plug into the system, I powered it down. I'm like, okay, perfect, this is working now, let's zip tie, let's cable manage, let's do all of that. I then took it downstairs to my room, unplugged my current computer with all the peripherals, plugged it all into my new computer, and it wouldn't turn on. At first, I thought that was my UPS, so I tried the surge protectors, all the plugs. I tried the outlet here, to the side, to the left of me, to the right of me. Then I brought it upstairs, tried the outlets, and the motherboard would light up, but the fans wouldn't spin, so that's what got me. I then tried a 430 watt Cooler Master, or 460 watt Cooler Master, non-modular power supply, super basic El Cheapo. That made the fan spin, but it still wouldn't boot. I later found out because the wattage wasn't high enough, even with integrated graphics, which I found was weird. Did a bunch of troubleshooting, but the issue is I don't have spare AM5 motherboards or DDR5 memories or AM5 CPUs, so I can't exactly do some part swap. I don't have a shelf of parts like Tech Deals does, or people at computer stores do. So I had to take it into a computer store, and I told them I think the power supply is broken. I don't know if anything else is broken. I had to pay $55 for the diagnostics, and then they told me, yes, your power supply is broken. They reiterated back to me what I already told them, and they charged me $55 to tell me what I already knew. Fascinating. So, yes, this does have a 10-year warranty. I reached out to the manufacturer, confirmation that this is dead. I tried, touching a paper clip to the 15th and 16th pin, didn't boot. Then I tried the other power supply. The fan did spin, this fan did not spin. Yet it still gave enough power to light up the motherboard, but not to actually spin the fans or to boot the system, or to actually power on the I/O. So my keyboard and mouse didn't light up or didn't work. So yeah, I found out that FSP switched management. They're now under new managements, which I found interesting. I know that I think Dell is also under new management, and since then the customer service has not been good, to say the least. That is why I ended up returning the Dell G16 after a year. They did give me a full refund, which is why I didn't take the entire issue public. So I just left it private. But that is interesting. A lot of companies are switching managements, and it is getting worse. So, yes. I did reach out for the 10-year warranty. It's going to take 2 months, maybe more, to get here. Frustrating, so I just bought this. This thing is not the most premium, but definitely, right? So you can go up to 1600 watts, and you can go from platinum to titanium. But other than that, this is the most premium. I also wouldn't recommend this. This is insane. This is overkill. The only reason why I bought this is because it was $120 off, making it $80 cheaper than the equivalently spec'd super flower power supply I was going to buy, and $40 cheaper than the MSI. ATX 3.1, so you can power 5090 without any hideous melting adapters. Fully modular platinum power supply, so this thing is uber ultra efficient. So if you do get charged a lot for your power bill, you might want to gold is probably fine, but I mean, if you really care, then okay, go platinum or titanium. But the only power I did see, there's like a 1300 or 1600 watt titanium, the only one that the store had, and that was like $650. So that was crazy. I'm definitely not buying that, staying away from it. As I said before, I am not a fan of ROG. The products are fine, I just don't like the prices. If this is the cheapest one, or equivalently priced, then okay, go with this. Never owned an ROG computer component. I was never planning on it, but I wasn't expecting it to be this cheap. 10-year warranty, 80 plus platinum. I have my FSP power supply, so that's why it's a little heavy. Gallium nitride technology. It does have strict stickers, DIY friendly, all of that. Basically, everything you would want in a power supply, it is here. Something else I want to say is the computer store I was at. I was with my mom, and they did say that, well, if you pay us $60 to install it, which is insane, $30 for a graphics card, which I think is even more insane, they would not only install it, but they would get my system up and running, stress test it, all of that, and they also guarantee the power supply. So if anything goes wrong with it, they will replace it. So, okay. I wasn't going to, but then my mom said I should, so okay. I paid the $60. And they somehow managed, these are professional computer builders, somehow managed to install the power supply upside down. So, you can't read the writing. Isn't that an indicator? There's also a manual in this box to install the power supply. You can also look it up. These are professional computer builders. Anyway, they still couldn't install the power supply properly. Then I boot up my computer, go into BIOS. They did not touch it. They did not enable anything. So I had to enable Expo, Secure Boot, all of the things I wanted. I then saw that they didn't install any drivers, even though they said they would get the system up and running. They said that they stress tested the system, and it was fine, but they didn't actually send me the results. So, very professional. I had to install all the drivers, graphics card and motherboard drivers, and my mom said, well, isn't it fine that like, this happened to you because you know how to do those things? And the answer is yes, but I spent hours doing it. So I thought if I spent the $60, I would save a bunch of time, but clearly that didn't happen. I know how to install a power supply. And if you're paying someone else to build a computer for you, you probably don't know a lot about computers, so you would want them to do everything for you. So ultimately, it is a disappointing experience, I must say. If I'm going to pay you to save me a bunch of time, then you better actually save me the time, because if you're not doing that, you're just wasting money. Okay, so someone might say, I went with a 1200 watt gold. Someone might say, well, hang on. With the specs of your system, you don't need a 1200 watt power supply. And to that I say, you're absolutely right. You don't. Now, originally, I was actually going to go with a 1000 watt power supply. And I know some people will say, you don't need a 1000 watt power supply. You're right, actually. I could have gotten away with an 850 watt power supply. But I didn't. I didn't want to do that, and I'll explain why in a second. But the 1200 watt wasn't that much more than the 1000 watts. And 1200 watts really future-proofs you, quote-unquote, even though I don't really like that word because you don't know what's coming in the future. But if you are wanting, I could throw in a 5090. I could throw in a 9950X3D. I could max it out with 8 terabyte SSDs, fill it up with 26 terabyte hard drives, and yes, there is a drive bay in case you didn't know already, in case I didn't mention that. More fans, a bunch of other stuff, double the RAM. This thing would be fine. Also, the reason why you should not go with 850, or the reason why you should spec your power supply above it, is one, because your power supply, you don't want it to fail. Unfortunately, mine did, because it can take everything else with it. Also, this was I don't remember exactly how much it was. It was in like the 250s, the 200 range, we'll say. $200 That was the most expensive power supply I bought in my lifetime by far. I've built a bunch of computers, a lot of low-end systems with low-end power supplies, mid-range systems with mid-range power supplies. Never once have I had it fail, and that includes El Cheapo 460 watt non-modular Dell power supplies that I've driven like 2 different countries multiple times, and to this day, both of those power supplies, the El Cheapo power supplies, that one and that one, are up and running completely fine. But yet, that one, the Hydro G FSP group, somehow failed. Why? But yeah, okay, anyway, for maximum efficiency and power supply health, you want it running between 50 and 80 watts. That is, percent. I'm getting tired here, as you can tell. For maximum efficiency and for maximum power supply health. If it's constantly running at 100%, well, it's not going to be very efficient, and the power supply's longevity will tank. Now, you've probably seen videos of YouTubers saying, well, look, I can get away with a much cheaper, much lower-end power supply because I did like a burst performance test benchmark. Yeah, you did that for one day. You didn't do it every day for multiple years. That's the thing. So they're not properly testing the longevity. I know a bunch of people say, you just overbuy on your power supplies. But quite frankly, you should. I would argue it's the most important component because it has the capability to take out everything with it. Next up, I want to talk about the case. And I don't have the case right here. It's in my room. I don't want to like unplug everything and like drag the entire system up here. It's heavy. A lot can go wrong. So I'm just going to keep it in my room. I showed it to you last video. If not, you can go back to that. Link is in the description down below. I went with the Fractal North. I love the case. I love everything about the case. I love how it looks. I love how easy it is to build in. I love the strong materials, the durability, the grip, the accents, the aesthetic, the airflow, the ambiance. I think you get the points. However, I would not recommend that you buy that case. Instead, I would recommend that you buy the Fractal North XL, which is 36% bigger. Now, the reason I say that is because I went with the Noctua NHD15G2, a massive 4-slot GPU. I knew what I was getting into. I knew it would be a cramped build, but the reason I went with the standard North as opposed to the XL is just because of the size constraints. A bigger case simply wouldn't fit under my desk, unfortunately. So that's why I went with the North standard. You can also get the Antex Flux, which is a similar aesthetic. Comes with 5 fans, which is very nice. And I think it's even bigger than the XL, I'm pretty sure. If I did have to make a complaint with the Fractal North, I would say it's a very expensive, very premium, $150 MSRP case. I think I bought it for around there. But yeah, it doesn't come with a exhaust fan, which I find very strange. I know they might say, well, consumers, myself included, would just buy additional fans, more higher-end fans. We'll talk about which ones I went with in a second, and that's true, but they included 2 140s, but not an exhaust. You should have an exhaust. It is very important. So, I mean, Fractal, come on, just make up your mind. I would recommend you buy fans with that. Something that Tech Deals did not mention in his why video, but he did like later on in a live stream when a fan sent him a super chat asking him a question, is do you put fans in your case? And the answer was yes, he does. I believe I could be completely wrong, but if I do remember, I believe Tech Deals said that like he puts, at least what I did was I'll talk more, but like 2 140s. He has a he has a Corsair 5000D. I know that. And I almost bought that, but I just don't have enough space for it. But it is definitely a premium case. I know they do have like the remasters, both at least a 4000D, and I like that. But the issue and the reason I didn't buy it is because the power button is all the way like at the bottom, so like I really have to like reach down, and I don't want to do that every time I have to turn my computer. I prefer the power button on top. But yeah, I believe I know that he installs like external fans, but yet he never talked about it in his why. So I will certainly do that in a second. One more thing though, I will say. The Fractal North is, as I was saying, a very premium case, though it's very cramped. Typically what happens in like working in like El Cheapo cases, as I know Tech Deals wants to say, if I'm like trying to like the CPU power cables, the 2 8-pins were especially difficult because I had like hardly any space to work with. I kept like jamming my fingers in the case. I didn't get cut. I didn't get hurt working in the case because of how smooth and premium the construction of the case is. That's rare. I can say that right now. Also, it's very sturdy. I have bent cases just by working with them. It did not happen here. Even if I'm like really rough with the Fractal, it's completely fine. Anyway, I do recommend the Fractal. If you want like a smaller case, yeah, go with the same Fractal North that I went with, though it is cramped if you're using bigger components like the Noctua NHD15G2 and a 4-slot GPU. or go with the XL if you like the look, you like everything about it, but just want 36% bigger. You can also go with the Antex Flux. Again, a case though, it's a personal preference. So I mean, there's so many. I can height Y70 touch, Corsair 7000D, 5000D, 4000D. There's the 3000D, but it's a lot less premium. I would not recommend that case for like this tier of builds. The NZXT, but I know NZXT has a lot of drama with their terrible renting services. I know Fractal has like their pop and their air and a bunch of other things. I can talk more about that in like a later video. But yeah, okay, I think I covered it. I do recommend the North. My only complaint is it's a little bit too small, but again, I knew what I was getting into due to my desk limitations. As I promised, we would be discussing case fans next. Now, as you can see here, I went with 4 Noctua 140mm fans, specifically their NFA14 PWM. The reason why I went with these instead of the G2s, I couldn't find enough G2s in stock. They're also a lot more expensive. They're like 3 times the price. So I can get 3 fans for the price of like 1 Noctua G2 fan. Also, I couldn't find enough G2 fans. So those 2 variables is why I own these. And I did get a very premium 120mm fan. This is the Noctua NFA12. Very nice fan. In the Fractal North XL, you can do a 140mm fan in the back, but you can't do that here. You can also do 3 140s in the front, but you can't do that here. You can only do 2. So that's why I went with that. I also prefer when I can go with 140s over 120s, because 140s can pull the same amount of air in without having to spin as fast, lowering the noise levels. So I do prefer that. As you can imagine right now, I am a massive fan of Noctua. I like their minimalist design. I like that it's not like rainbow, unicorn, bright lights in your face. It's just a muted black fan. I have 2 140s in the front. I have 2 140s. So the 140s are taking air in. Then I have 2 140s up top, sucking air up to like push out the dust. There's also a very nice magnetic dust filter on the Fractal North. But I mean, a lot of cases have that, to be fair. It has like a nice like leather pull tab, which I haven't seen before. Gold trimmings around the case. Nice dark wooden oak. You've seen it before. And then a 120mm fan that also exhausts the hot air out. You can also install an 80mm fan to like blow air on the GPUs if you want. I haven't done that yet. I might, though I'm not sure how much of a difference that would make. Oh, also, something else. I realized, silly me, I knew that the Fractal North had a fan hub in the back of it. However, that's only with the mesh for some reason, not the glass. So I didn't have enough fan headers, so I had to buy, for like 10 bucks, I bought like some fan splitters. No big deal. Noctua does come with like, I think, like 1, but it's not nearly enough. So I had to buy some additional ones. No big deal. I wouldn't do, I think I wouldn't do more than 1, sorry, I wouldn't do more than 4 fans per fan header, because I believe the fan header can do 1 amp, and these can do like, these pull like 0.25s, so it's easy to like overwhelm it if you have a bunch. But I mean, you can plug in up to 8 fans in like a small mid-tower case. So I think the vast majority of people would be fine with that. I mean, even 3 120s on the front, 3 120s up top, 3 120s up front, 120, that's 7, and then another fan blowing air on the GPUs. So that's 8 right there. You can't fit a 9th fan. So even if you completely max it out, you'll still be fine. But just like a warning, if you're building with a bigger case, it's not, you can't just like plug in unlimited fans to like a fan hub or a fan splitter or a fan connector. But yeah, I love these fans. Even when they're maxed out, I can still hardly hear them. So, I mean, there's not a lot to say about fans. I know TechDeal didn't mention them in his video, even though he does use fans. So I thought I would say it in my video. I usually don't include fans in like my parts list build guides for you guys, and I know at least one person, if not more, mentioned it in the comment section down below saying that they want more fans, so I did that. Another thing I was going to talk about at the end of the video, but I'll talk about it now. A lot of the times I see tech YouTubers do like quote-unquote pure performance computers, and all they'll do is El cheapo case, El cheapo power supply, hardly any, I guess, no additional case fans. Spend all the money, throw in a massive GPU, 16 gigabytes of RAM, puny 5 to 12 gigabyte SSD, that's the only SSD in the system. Look, high FPS for cheap. Okay, but you sacrifice everything to get there, and I guarantee the tech YouTuber themselves aren't actually using that computer. They have a far nicer, more balanced system. So I would not recommend that you build something like that, because you will regret it, because chances are you're not just gaming, and even if you are, you'll still run into all kinds of hurdles like storage and even RAM. I mean, 16 gigabytes of RAM just isn't enough for AAA titles now. But yeah, that is something to think about. Build a balanced PC. Don't just spend everything on the GPU. Okay, now that concludes the parts video. I've gone through all the parts. I've explained why I've chose those parts in the best detail that I can. Again, I don't have a script. I'm just going off my head. Hopefully you enjoyed that TechDeal style. TechDeals, again, please come back. We miss you. I miss you. I want you back. We want you back. Okay, something else I want to mention is when you build your computer, you obviously need a OS, an operating system, to install on it. Now, you might do Linux, which is fine if you're just a casual user. You can't really... I've tried to do like some work applications on that. It's questionable at best. A lot of my software suite doesn't even support Linux, so I have to use Windows. I use Windows 11 Pro specifically. Now, with that said, a lot of YouTubers would say you should buy your Windows license here, 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 here. Typically, they're being paid by those companies, so I want to take this opportunity to give my opinion as someone who is not paid and has never been paid by any of these companies. Now, if you are at a computer store, chances are they will say, well, no, we only buy from Microsoft Windows. We only buy our Windows license from Microsoft, and they might even say it's illegal to buy from somewhere else, or it's a gray area, something like that, which is false. And quite frankly, I don't believe that they are buying it from Microsoft. I believe that they're taking your $200+ and then they're just buying it from a third-party CD key software. Now, I would recommend that you buy it from a third-party CD key software, like WhoKeys, G2A, or what is... Oh, hang on. What is the one I bought it from? UR CD Keys. Code TD20, which is TechDeals20. That's the code I used. Save 20% off. You can save money by going with Windows 11 Home. I personally need Pro because I need virtualization and a BitLocker, which are Windows 11 Pro feature exclusives, but most people can get away with saving some money and just going with Home. So chances are, if you've heard people say you should just buy from, don't save money, buy from Microsoft directly, chances are you've heard from those people who have an incentive, who want to make money, which is exactly why you probably, maybe I wouldn't go so far as to say you shouldn't trust them, but to say that you should at least question their motives. So I bought it from URCD keys, code CD20. I recommend you don't have to go with that one. Just go with like the cheapest third-party Windows licensing software. And yes, they are completely legit. They work just fine. Mine does. All of them I've used do. All the people I know who've used them work completely fine. Now, you might be asking, okay, then what the heck is with the price disparity? Now, Tech Deals actually had a pretty good video where he went in depth. I will try to find that and link it in the description down below. But basically what he said is a lot of people were pirating Microsoft Windows, which, yes, is illegal, so don't do that. Also, when you do pirate stuff, you set yourself up to inhabit all sorts of viruses from sketchy websites. So, as the saying goes, once again, if you're cheap, if you try to save a couple bucks by pirating something, chances are you get a virus frying your entire computer. You have to spend thousands of dollars more to build or buy a new computer when you try to save $5. So don't try to save $5 on a movie and pirate it. Just pay the money. Don't pirate stuff. It always bites you in the back. But anyway, Microsoft noticed a lot of people were pirating Windows. So they said, okay, guys, that is illegal. But if we sell it to you for, say, a couple bucks, $5, $10, $20, will you just buy it from us for cheap? And they're like, okay, yeah, sure, we'll pay you. So they paid Microsoft not that much money to get the licenses, and then they sell those licenses to us, the consumer, and it's a win-win because we're happy because we get Windows from a discounted price, and they're happy because they made a profit. Now, you can also buy dirt cheap keys on eBay, but I haven't tested them out for sure. I should probably do that before I comment. But from what I've heard, from what I know, those are from corporations who get Windows Enterprise licenses just for them. And when you do purchase a key, from what I understand, if you try to use it on your own computer, what happens is Microsoft will say, hey, we gave those keys to this business, not to this individual consumer. What is he doing? Okay, I'm going to deactivate the key, and then you lose your Windows activation. So that's what happens with those cheapo eBay keys, but not with legit keys like URCD keys, Who keys, or G2A. There's a whole bunch more that I know of. So basically, hopefully, I summarized the difference decently. I know that in my tech school that I go to, you get free Windows education licenses. However, you are not allowed to put those keys on a computer that you use for work, that you use personally outside of work, or you're not allowed to sell them, because if you do, you will face a fine of $10,000, and the Windows license will get deactivated on the computer that's not your school computer. So I don't do that. Obviously, no one should do that, but I know Windows does. They do give you free Windows education licenses for students of tech schools, and maybe more students on top of that. I'm just not entirely sure. So save the money, go with a legit third-party CD licensing software. It's exactly the same. You won't notice the difference. You can also just get Windows for free by downloading the ISO file. However, you have the permanent watermark. You can't change your wallpaper. Features are very limited. So just spend the money, $30, if not less, to activate Windows. You get the entire thing. You can go with Home, not Pro, because chances are most people don't need the features. But yeah, okay, I wanted to touch on that because not a lot of people do, and if they do, they usually get paid by something, so they have an incentive to say good things about one thing over the other. I don't, so I just wanted to give my unbiased, unpaid, unsponsored opinion on that. Hopefully that made sense. At this point, I have been filming for hours. I can feel like my throat's swelling up, so my voice is about to give up soon. If you stick this out, that is incredible. I have been filming for hours. 2 gold stars for you. If you knew what happened to Tech Deals, please drop a comment. Hopefully you'll stick around for part 3. I will hopefully be filming that in the next week or 2. Hopefully no later than a month. I've been filming for hours. I'll probably spend another multiple hours sitting down, editing, combing through the footage. Hopefully I did all right. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. If you want me to make a particular video, drop a comment down below and I'll try to make it happen. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I cannot thank you enough. Hopefully I'll see you in part 3. God bless.